Hey guys, I'm Angela, you're watching Hobby Night, and this morning rather, Games Workshop announced a whole slew of new miniatures and codexes in their codex preview, so let's go ahead and get straight to it. So we're gonna do the news a smidge differently this time in the sense that there's a lot to cover, it's a lot to go over, and I'm primarily gonna focus on sort of my thoughts and the things that I'm most excited about because let's face it, there's a lot of various other news sites out there that you can get the more specific details, and you can also go and check out the Warhammer community site to get all of the specifics for the data sheets and all that. So I'm not going to go into too much detail on specific rules or anything that were covered, although there were a couple of them that I'm very hyped for, and we'll get to those in a little bit. But I'm going to start with what they announced for Forge World. So there is a new compendium that they are coming out with that is going to support all of the current Forge World 40k units, which is very cool. I personally don't run any Forge World units, but I know a lot of people do, especially in competitive. So this is very, very exciting for them. And it's especially interesting because we're going to be getting new rules for the Titan Legions, which is awesome. We're also getting some much needed support for the Death Corps of Krieg. I hope I pronounced that right. I have been stumbling over it all morning. And we are also excitingly getting the War Boss on bike back because we were told originally that that was going to go away to Legends only, but they're including it in here because you can get that mini through Forge World, so now you can run him again, even though he won't be in the Orcs Codex. And that's pretty awesome. I'm glad to see that that is back.
Lord Cole, you can't just solve all of our problems by making more Primaris Space Marines.
The hell I can't.
Next up, we're gonna go ahead and talk about the fact that Space Marines are getting a whole bunch of new things, and it's very cool. I'm excited. We got a couple of the releases that we had sort of seen leaked, specifically with the Storm, what was it called? Let me see, it's the Storm Speeder, which of course is gonna come in 3 variants, which is very cool. They of course showed us those minis and they look lovely. I'm very excited for them. We also got a preview of a couple of the Crusade rules out of the Codex, including the one where you can put your favorite characters and attune them into that torturous sarcophagus that is the Dreadnought. And I actually like the focus that they're doing, where they're focusing on really making your characters unique, where you can like really enhance some chaplains or librarians or those kinds of things in Crusade to really make it more thematic and build a story around them. And I love that because Crusade is the thing that I'm most excited about for the new release, and I'm glad to see that they're really emphasizing it with these previews and all of these announcements. So I'm excited for it. Let me know what you guys are most excited about for the Crusade rules and everything. I particularly am curious to know if we're going to see people intentionally letting their characters just like, oh, he's near death or he's gotten his second wound. I guess it's not such a big deal, I'll just put him in a Dreadnought. But I imagine we might see a little bit of that in the future. In addition, for the Space Marines, we got a whole bunch of other new models, not just the vehicles. We also got the announcement for the kits for the Assault Intercessors, for the Eradicators, for the Blade Guard Veterans, which are all going to be multi-part kits so that you can customize them and make them your own, which is of course what you didn't get in the Indominus. Those were the easy to build, so you were kind of stuck with the poses, but now you're gonna have a lot more flexibility. We also got a new Gravis Captain with heavy bolt rifle. So they're really seeming to emphasize characters and giving us a lot of options for those, both in the kits as well in the rules. And I really think it's cool. But I am now going to move on to the Necrons because while the Space Marines are near and dear to my heart, the Necrons are far more interesting to me because, well, we're going to be using those in our own battle reports on this channel, so let's go ahead and get into it.
Tell me, Immortal, have they left yet?
No, sorry, my lord. They're back, and this time, their tanks float.
Fine. Fetch the destroyers.
We're finally getting plastic Flayed Ones, and it's about time because we have been hoping for it forever, and now we're getting them. And I can't be more excited. I'm very, very I'm actually very interested to see how I might paint them if John ends up running them in his army, because if you guys have seen my color scheme, it's super, super bright, but I definitely want to capture the fact that they're covered in all of that flesh because it's gory and I love it, and it fits them obviously because, you know, they're wearing the skin of the people that they murder and everything and destroy in battle. And I don't know how I'm going to approach it, but I'm probably the most excited for that mini, oddly enough, just because of the challenge that it's going to be for painting. I expect you may see a painting video on that in the future. We'll see, but I can't wait for them, and I'm finally glad to see that we're getting those plastic minis. But that is not all that we were shown, and of course it's also definitely not the most important thing that we were shown. So we were previewed the new codex. It's going to be 120 pages, and the most interesting thing that I think that they showed us about it is the command protocols. So the command protocols are going to be very similar to chapter tactics. We sort of expected that. That was not uncommon. There's going to be 6 types, each of which is going to contain 2 different options that you can use. Now the player will determine what protocol type in each round, and then choose one of those options. Now, I do think it's going to be interesting because I believe they mentioned that certain dynasties are going to synergize with certain protocols probably better than others, in the same way that chapter tactics do the same thing, and like the Death Guard have their plague companies. I imagine it's all going to be in that same vein. So I'm really curious to see what all of the dynasties are going to be able to do with all of these different protocols and how they're going to work and what kind of variety we're going to be getting out of it, because we not just got the Flayed One new minis, we also had announced a whole bunch of new, well, several new destroyers, because they really seem to be pushing the destroyers right now. And I'm hyped for them because, and I don't know how to pronounce this, I'm probably gonna pronounce it wrong, but they're called Ophydian Destroyers. They're kind of wraith-like, and I really think they're cool. I hope this doesn't mean that we're gonna see wraiths go away. Like in the live stream, they talked about like, oh no, they're definitely not. But the more and more destroyers that they put out for the Necrons, and the less that we see of any other options like for the wraiths and stuff like that, I'm curious if we'll see them go away down the line. I really hope not. I think the wraiths are very cool. I just don't know how usable they are with all of the melee destroyers, and now like, there's just so much. There's so many cool things for them. And the other very, very neat thing, and I'm glad to see that we have really cool characters coming out for not just Space Marines, that Necrons are getting them. I'm hoping we'll see, I mean, we obviously have very cool characters for a lot of the other Xeno races, but Necrons, they were all tended to be the resin stuff, or they were kind of generic, or there was only a few of them. We're now getting a bunch more, and they showed us a new Chronomancer, which is going to be about time manipulation. So I'm very curious about those rules. I'm curious if it's going to be like reroll charges and invul saves, like those kinds of things. They, I can't remember if they actually showed us the rules specifically or not, now that I'm thinking about it as I'm going over this, but I want to be able to look at it in more detail and actually play around with building those lists, because I think it's going to be really fun and exciting. I think you're going to have a lot of options going forward. They didn't just show the Chronomancer. They also showed the Psychomancer, which is the one that I'm a lot more interested in just visually as a miniature, because it has that cool like digital skull thing in the front, and it looks so rad. Like, it's the same design sort of thing that they did for the one, I can't remember his name right now, but it was a 2 set. It came with a sister, and then there was the Harlequin is the word that I was struggling to find there. And it reminds me of what they did for his ground. They did this sort of in the skull, and I think it's super rad. But you guys are probably curious, like, well, what are the rules and everything? He is pulling from a Satan shard, which buffs leadership and also causes some additional stuff in regards to combat attrition. So he's really affecting that, and I think that's a good way to approach it. Leadership in 8th edition and stuff wasn't really used that much. We've definitely seen buffs and everything too, and it's become a much bigger deal in 9th. And this just continues to prove that and make sure that you are paying attention to those kinds of things as you're going forward in your games, because there might be even more things, not just this Necron Lord or this Necron Psychomancer, that can affect combat attrition. There may be other things down the line and additional codexes as we go, and so that's something that we really need to start being aware of. And honestly, that's about it for the Necrons. They got a lot of cool stuff. We got to see a lot of really cool new minis. Let me know, which one are you guys more excited for, the Necrons or the Space Marines? I know, for me personally, obviously, it's the Necrons because that's just what I'm more interested in. But we have a little bit of news left to talk about. That is the fact that we also had announced 3 supplements for the Space Marines. So we're finally getting a couple supplement books, and those are coming in well, they said 2020. They didn't actually give us a date. I'm hoping it's November, because it's not just 3 Space Marine supplements. We're also getting our first Chaos book, and it's the Death Guard, which honestly is probably appropriate considering Death Guard have the oldest codex currently. And so I am very, very excited as a Death Guard player. I have been looking forward to having a new codex for a very long time. And I still had a new codex in 8th edition and everything like that. But since then, I have been waiting for my updated codex, and now I'm finally getting it because they've previewed it, and it's coming in 2020. And I really hope that it's coming in November so that we don't have to extend doing our battle reports or our Crusade game or anything like that, because now that we actually have the Death Guard Codex announced and the Necron Codex, well, those are our 2 armies. So we'll see what comes for that, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below. What are you most excited for with all of the big announcements today? And I will see you guys on Monday for a painting video. I'll catch you then. See you later. Games Workshop